It's important that you keep it realistic and that you are also honest with your audience. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode in my series of essential landscape photography skills. Now, today I'm going to tackle a topic that gets photographers talking, sometimes even arguing, and this is editing. Now, specifically, how far is too far in landscape photography? And at what point does it go from being an enhanced photo to something that's actually misleading? Now, this isn't just about sliders and presets, this is about trust, it's about intent, and it's about how we represent the landscapes that we shoot. So let's break it down, and as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below when we're done. Now, starting off with something really simple. Editing, it isn't new. So long before digital cameras or any photographers out there, we were all dodging and burning and adjusting tones in the darkroom. So it's always been part of the craft. In fact, some of the most iconic landscape images, think for example of Ansel Adams, were heavily processed by hand. The difference now is the scale and the ease that we can do that. So with tools like Lightroom and Photoshop, and now even AI-based editors, you can completely transform a scene in minutes. So that opens up a creative world, but also it brings a few questions about honesty and intention. In reality, what is editing for? Well, at its core, post-processing helps you to interpret the scene the way you saw it, or the way that you felt it. So maybe your raw file looks flat, or maybe the camera didn't quite capture the light the way your eyes experienced it. So that's where editing steps in. So basic adjustments like exposure, white balance, contrast, sharpening, these are all widely accepted as standard, and they help refine an image without changing its nature. But the issue comes up when we move around and beyond that. So replacing skies, shifting colors to unnatural hues, or removing or adding elements. Now you can also go about stretching mountains. You can also clone in a fog or add in some sunlight that wasn't even there. Are these creative choices or are they dishonesty? That's a question that we need to think about. Let's get to the real question. Where do we draw the line? So I think there's a few principles that we can follow that can help. Number one is representing reality. So if you're presenting your image as a documentary record, especially of a competition or a journal, then your edit should reflect what was there. Now, massively altering the scene could also be misleading. Number two is serving the story. So if you're trying to convey the emotion of a moment, it is okay to push the image a bit further. Maybe you warm the tones to reflect how the scene felt and not just how it looked. But it's important that you keep it realistic and that you are also honest with your audience. And then the third type is personal versus professional. So if you're creating personal art, then of course you have more creative freedom than you could ever imagine. But when you're selling prints or doing some commercial or licensing work, transparency absolutely matters. People deserve to know what they're buying. And it's not something that you would try and pass off as being real when you know that you created it through the pixels on your screen. Now, also, most photography competitions are very clear. If you replace a sky or you move elements, then you could be disqualified. So it's always important to check the rules and to respect them. And it's not about editing less, it's about being honest with your intent. Now, there are many contests over the years, and I'm sure you would have seen some of them, where big names or big name contests were won by altered images. Now, that's not something that I'm comfortable with, and I'm sure most of you guys out there wouldn't be comfortable with it either. So it's important that you are being honest, not only to your audience, but also to yourself. Now it's important that we strike a balance, but what does striking a balance look like? So to me, this is about enhancing your image without deceiving your viewer. So if you had to wait for the right light or hike to a location to compose carefully and expose properly, then you've done the hard part. Using editing to refine that vision, so for example, lifting the shadows, adding clarity or bringing out contrast, this is all acceptable. But keep the integrity of the moment intact. And if you do want to push it further, let's say for artistic expression, then just be upfront about it. There's no shame in creating edits as long as you don't present them as something that they're not. Far too often, we see out of these world images, which aren't depicted by the author as a digital image, but are instead presented as a standard image. This is where I feel honesty should really come into the mix. I've seen many images that are being portrayed of something that they're actually not. Now I know the locations and I know that they don't look that way, but how about somebody who doesn't know that and they see this image and they believe that this image is real? They jump on a plane, they go, they hike, they find, and all of a sudden it doesn't look like what they saw in that image. It would be a lot easier to be upfront and say, this is a composite image, or this is something that I've created from here. It doesn't look like this in real life. But that's the challenge, because most people who are looking for editing in these images are having their own creative vision. But when you start looking at the challenges we have in the likes of social media, this is all about potentially getting likes. So if you push it and push it and push it, and all of a sudden it loses the integrity, then you're actually now taking something that you'd enjoy to take a photograph for the wrong reasons, which is for social likes or fame or whatever.
I hope you're enjoying this video. I just wanted to jump in real quick to remind you that you can grab a copy of my free 62-page ebook, Essential Landscape Photography Skills, when you join my newsletter. It's packed with tips from my years behind the camera, plus interactive links to YouTube videos showing how I captured those shots, and dedicated tutorials on each topic. Sign up, download it instantly, and take your landscape photography to the next level. There's links in the description below. Back to the video.
Now I want to give you some examples from my own work. So in West Cork last year, I shot a moody scene under thick grey skies, but I still had some colour at sunset. The raw file looked flat, but of course that was to be expected. But with careful contrast, tone curves and adjustments, and even some dodging and burning, I brought back the feeling at this place without obviously inventing anything new. Now on the other hand, I've also created compositions for creative projects, but I always label them as such. It's important that your audience know where the line is and when you've crossed it into a more illustrative or artistic space. So how far is too far? Well, that depends on your intent and your audience and how honest you are about your edits. It's not about one size fits all rule, but if you're thoughtful and of course transparent, you'll earn more respect in the long run from both your peers and your followers. Let me know in the comments, how do you approach editing? Are you a purist or do you enjoy the pushing creative boundaries? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button for more videos like this, when we dive into practical and philosophical side of photography, please hit that button below. Now, before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank my incredible Patreon supporters. Because of your support, it makes all this possible. Now, whether it's helping me to get out to more locations or dedicating the time to share these lessons, then I couldn't do it without you. If you'd like to join this amazing community and gain exclusive content, early access to videos, and even get discounts on my guidebooks and workshops, I'd love for you to consider joining me on Patreon. Just scan the QR code right here and I'd love to have you on board. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'm lucky enough to see you on the next one. Slán go fóill.